Ladies and gentlemen, please join in welcoming Kent Emerson, President of the Empire Club of Canada, to the podium.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. From the Omni King Edward Hotel in downtown Toronto, welcome to the meeting. For those of you just joining us through either our webcast or our podcast, welcome to the meeting. Today we present the International Women's Day panel, Women Who Lead. I'm very proud to celebrate this occasion with all of you. International Women's Day, coming up on March 8th, is very important to me and to the Empire Club. So much so that we have dedicated ourselves to holding this event annually. In the spirit of the occasion, I am going to call Jenna Hay, one of our directors, up here in just a minute to give some contextual remarks. Before I'd like to do this, I'd like to do a couple of things. First, I'd like to thank Megan Boyle for organizing this event, for being the lead on it. And the second thing is I want to talk about a change maker. The Empire Club, having a vintage as long as we have, has required change makers here. We have a past president who was the first women president in 1984. Madam Past President, thank you for coming today. I'd like everyone to congratulate Catherine Charlton. And I know she's here somewhere. I'm looking for her. You want to say thank you. First women president of the Empire Club of Canada. And I'd like to invite Jenna Hay up here to say a bit more. Thank you.
Well, Baroness von Sketch is a bit of a tough act to follow. But thank you, Kent, and thank you all for being here today. For this event, we carefully selected a panel of women who are leaders in a variety of ways. Women who have not just achieved success in their respective fields, but who have brought and continue to bring important issues to light, and who work to create positive change. We're gathered to not only celebrate International Women's Day, but also to continue meaningful conversations about women's advancement, be it social, corporate, or economic in nature. And these conversations matter greatly. For one, they help us identify what works or what doesn't. Perhaps most importantly, they help us better understand what's missing or what has yet to be done as we work towards gender equality. One of the best tools we have at our disposal is data. And when we look at the data behind women's economic advancement, things may seem a bit grim. Take, for example, women's representation on corporate boards. The recently released 2018 Spencer Stuart Board Index identified that 30% of all non-executive director appointments were women, a 10% decline from 2017, where it was 40%. Last September, the Canadian Securities Administrators released their fourth report on women on boards and in executive positions. The total percentage of board seats occupied by women was 15%. 4 years before, it was 11%. And actually, I should note just for a moment that I'm very pleased to serve on the board of the Empire Club that has 40% representation by women and strong leadership at the helm as identified by Catherine Charlton, our past president. So thank you. But back to the numbers. They are trending upward, but at a glacial pace. And if these stats don't do it for you, we can replay that clip again. But the numbers found in these reports are important because they hold a mirror up to our attitudes and to our decision-making. They also help hold individuals and groups accountable for that decision-making. And at their core, they raise an increasingly salient and at times difficult question. Does what we do work? Should we do things differently? When we discuss women's corporate or economic advancement, we often talk about the need to get more women into certain systems, often ones that have traditionally been unwelcoming. We talk about the need to get more women into STEM or more women on boards. These are important conversations to have. But if we don't approach the how of it with a critical lens, we may miss the opportunity to effectively create structures and systems that are truly more inclusive of women. Thank you. I'll use a personal example. I work in fintech, and much of the policy work that I undertake focuses on better understanding the challenges faced by women business owners who are accessing capital. Throughout our examination of the issue, we have returned to the question time and time again of whether or not we need to change the way that women access capital, providing them with a different kind of system that works for them, rather than just relying on traditional methods. I, like many others, continually face the challenge of figuring out a real solution to this real problem. When we examine the issues that women encounter, we must remember that long-established systems and structures often disadvantage women. Negative views of women are embedded in our culture and are the status quo of many of our workplaces. This is why we must tackle these issues with ingenuity, creativity, and resilience. It's no easy feat. But taking this approach can yield great, lasting results. And thankfully for all of us, we have 4 panelists who are ready to engage us in meaningful and critical conversation about how we achieve those results. As our panelists share their opinions on the advancement of women's equality, I look forward to being challenged on the way I think about and approach the issues women face. And judging by this jam-packed room, I would venture to guess that all of you do too. Thank you very much.
Okay, let's get started. We are going to start with the moderator today, who is a passionate speaker and facilitator focused on gender-based issues related to the social and emotional development of boys, the health and well-being of men, as well as diversity and inclusion. His work at Next Gen Men, a nonprofit promoting positive masculinities, healthy relationships, and gender equity in schools, communities, and workplaces, has impacted the lives of men and boys and those they touch across Canada. Recently named one of the Avenue magazine's top 40 under 40, as well as having earned recognition from Ashoka, the British Council, and the Canadian Centre for Diversity and Inclusion, Jake has also spoken at the United Nations as part of the Canadian delegation and participated in the UN Women's Safe Cities Initiative Global Forum. Please welcome to the stage the Executive Director and co-founder of Next Gen Men, Jake Stika. A frequent flyer on women's issues, she has contributed to a number of publications across North America, including The Walrus, The New Republic, Lucky, Toronto Life, Reader's Digest, En Route. She has also held senior-level editing positions at the Globe and Mail, Saturday Night, Azure, and FQ. From 2009 to 2015, she was the head copywriter behind the successful transformation of Hudson's Bay, Canada's iconic department store. Jessica is an alumnus of the University of British Columbia's creative writing program. Please welcome the Executive Director and Creative Director of The Walrus, Jessica Johnson. Our next guest was first elected as a Member of Parliament for Markham Thornhill in 2017 and was appointed Minister of Small Business and Expert Promotion in July. Through her 20 years of public services, Minister Ng has been passionate community leader and advocate with a proven track record of results in the areas of education, women's leadership, job creation, and entrepreneurship. Prior to serving as a Member of Parliament, she has worked as Director of Appointments in the Prime Minister's office. She has also served as the Director of Policy in Provincial Education, where she builds relationships negotiated with teachers' unions and served students while helping to improve Ontario's education system. Minister Ng also served in the President's office at Ryerson University, helping to shape new initiatives that connected students in their innovative ideas with businesses, creating quality jobs for young Canadians. She has been a speaker and panelist on topics ranging from business, innovation, women in leadership, and Canada-Chinese relations. Please welcome the MPP for Markham Thornhill and Canada's Minister of Small Business, the Honourable Marianne. Our next guest is the Senior Executive in charge of ensuring significant growth in KPMG's practice by bringing the best of KPMG's people, intellectual capital, alliances, and assets from around the world to Canada's largest banks. She has focused strictly on the financial services sector for over a decade and has established a niche in developing greenfield big bank targets, primarily global systematically important banks, GSIBs, for the world's leading technology and professional service firms. Before KPMG Canada in 2015, she held leadership in roles at CSC UK, PwC UK, and PwC Canada. She sat on the United Way of Toronto's campaign cabinet in Gen Next for 2 years prior to leaving Toronto in 2012, and is very passionate about women empowerment and leadership. Having spoken at length on this topic at industry events in Bay Street and beyond, she is a proud member of Ascend Canada's Board of Directors. Please welcome the Vice President of Business Development for KPMG's Canada's Banking and Capital Markets Practice, Farah Qasemi. Our final guest is the founder of #Radical Generosity and SheEO, a network-based ecosystem approach to select funding, supporting, and scaling women-led ventures, building new models, new mindsets, and new solutions for a better world. Vicki has co-founded and run ventures in Europe, Toronto, and Silicon Valley, and taken a company public on the Toronto Stock Exchange. Vicki was recently named one of the 100 most influential leaders of 2015 from empowering a billion women. In 2001, Vicki was selected as the global leader for tomorrow by the World Economic Forum. Please welcome entrepreneur, award-winning mentor, advisor to the next generation of changemakers, Vicky Saunders.
Awesome, welcome. We have a tough task ahead of us. We have to squeeze in a lot of really great conversation in 30 minutes, but we're going to try to do that. And I'm really honored to be part of this panel because oftentimes people ask me, what is something that men can do as an action to further women, advance gender equality? And I say we should go on a listening tour. We should ask 10, 20, however many women in our lives that we care about, their experiences in the workplace, their experiences with street harassment, and we will quickly come to find that the threads are the same throughout the stories, and we will build empathy from that. So hopefully we can hear some of your stories today. So, low ball, what does International Women's Day mean to you? And we'll start at the far end with Vicki.
I have a love/deep dislike of this day and this week. So on the one hand, it's amazing that organizations like yourself, the media, most corporations do a lot of work this week finding women, putting them on stage, putting them on the news, writing about them in the media. That's awesome. But also it just shines a light on the rest of the year when that is not a priority, and you can just see how imbalanced we are. So yes to modeling the behavior, and boo to the fact that it's not much more scaled out.
Farah?
International Women's Day is very, very personal to me. So as an ambitious woman, as someone who works in an industry that can be traditionally male-dominated, as a mom, as a self-made immigrant, as someone who does not work regular hours, to this day, and as someone who's like, I'm literally the only woman sometimes in meetings that I attend, and younger by a decade. To this day, I still work extra hard to get taken seriously, and that's not uncommon, according to the World Economic Forum. Regardless of what we do today, it's going to take us about 100 years to close the gender pay gap. So this is a real and tangible issue. And regardless, to Vicky's point, regardless of forums like this, I can see despite that, there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. So I am quite passionate about this week, and I wish every week was IWD week. At firms like mine, for example, KPMG in accounting, when it comes to university intakes, we take in more than 50% women. And in our industry, accounting as a whole, something happens between graduation and partnership where that percentage just nosedives. So we are one of the industry leaders, and we're currently at 28% female partners. And so when I look at the world I live in, there is so much work that we still have to do, so I'm a very, very big promoter of it.
Yeah, oftentimes we focus a bit too much on the quote-unquote pipeline issue, but we don't really look at the retention piece. I've partnered with a woman in Vancouver who works in coaching women in male-dominated industries, and she has a brilliant graph that shows general attrition rates, and it's something like 10 to 15%, and then she works in the STEM field, and then it's something like 60%. And she says, well, women in STEM aren't having 6 times more babies, so what's the issue there?
What's going on?
Right? So we have to look at the culture piece. Minister Ng.
Sure. Following a little bit of what both Farah and Vicky said, I love this week, and I hope it doesn't take 100 years to close the pay gap. We make 88 cents to the dollar right now, women to men, and we've put legislation forward that actually will close that. So let's hope that it's not 100 years. But I would say, just to add to another statistic, so a week like this gives me the opportunity to talk about it, but it also gives me an opportunity to talk about all the things that we're doing to try to solve it. So I have a mandate to double the number of women entrepreneurs by 2025. But here's the number. It's 16% today that are women-led or women-owned entrepreneurs in Canada. 99% of our businesses in this country are small and medium-sized businesses, and it's only 16%. So it shouldn't take 100 years to close that gap, and I am going to double the number of female entrepreneurs by 2025.
What about yourself?
I might speak for a lot of people in the room when I say, growing up, I imagined equality as being a state where my gender was no longer an issue. I wanted the same opportunities as men, the same jobs. I always thought I would make the same amount as men. It was quite a shock to discover that I wouldn't. And now I'm in my 40s, it's a bit of a surprise to be still actually fighting it more than ever. And I've realized that the role for someone like me is to be an advocate for other women, for other minorities. So I think this day, while a bit of a Hallmark holiday, is actually extremely important in just making these issues apparent.
Yeah, a level of visibility, for sure. And so moving away from the day or the week itself, what as individuals are you most proud of to get to where you're sitting today and moving forward as well? Maybe we'll go back the other direction now.
Well, at the Walrus, we've talked a lot about inclusion, and we see gender not in isolation of race and ability and all kinds of other things. When I first started, women were a minority at the Walrus, and it was really hard to get stories by and about women through the magazine. And that was just the culture. No one was really standing in my way saying you couldn't, but it had always been a boys' club. And so I formed a secret group of women on the team. This is important. There was only 2 or 3 of us at the beginning, and we workshopped stories and ideas so that we would learn how to present them in a way that the men accepted them. And I would often leave the gender of the subject out until the very end of a pitch. And I would actually use methods much like that lady in the Baron Response sketch, except that, just trying to sort of like speak the language of the other side.
Yeah, I'd like to nominate someone who did this.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're nodding, and then
won a Nobel.
Yeah, absolutely. Finishing.
So I think representation matters. Yeah. When I ran for office, I would say that today I have a better sense of why representation matters so much. I'll share with you a little story. On the weekend, I was with about 100 young people, high school students. And they gave me a question, and the question was, what advice would you give to your 15-year-old self? And I really had to think long and hard about what my answer was going to be. My answer to them was, I need you to love more, to be compassionate more. And I need you to fight for what you believe in, because you're gonna have to have a fight. My 15-year-old self did not have the challenges that they have today. They have climate change facing them. I asked the question, how many of you think it's important? Well, imagine every single one of you put your hands up, because that's what happened in that room. And imagine that when they go onto social media, the dialogue that is happening there today causes a lot of confusion about what they need to do to take their place, their ownership. And in that room, it was 3/4 women. And that room of high school students were young people learning how to create pitches so that they can get the skills they need to create the enterprise that they want to be a part of, the society they want to create. So representation, I'm learning week by week, year by year. Representation absolutely matters. Look at the panel that you have here of the women. And thank you for your work, because I am part of a team and a cabinet that is made up of 50% women and 50% men. The dialogue and the conversations and the decision-making that takes place at that table is so much more robust and enriching for our country because we have the 50-50. So representation really matters.
Absolutely. We all have a role to play on International Women's Day. Yeah. Fair.
I struggled with this question quite a bit when I was thinking about it this morning, and it just tells you how statistically women just do not toot their own horns. But anyway, looking back, and this is with a caveat, it's really because of the big village around me. But I know billions of people before me have done it, but what I'm most proud of is the fact that, and when I look back at it, I really still get goosebumps. I probably the most successful, most accomplished years of my career have been the 2 years when I was pregnant and I was a new mother. And I'm so thankful to my colleagues and my clients and people I work with and my family and my friends and my village that they supported me. I still have vivid memories of, with one hand nursing and the other hand negotiating like an 8-figure deal on my laptop and on the phone at my kitchen counter at 10 p.m. on a Tuesday night. And I think we women are capable of crazy things. And I just wish we would just celebrate ourselves and each other a bit more.
Yeah. Mothers are superhumans. I mean, I think when we're listing through resumes, mothers should definitely be on there, and that's an asset, not a liability.
Totally.
Vicki.
So what I'm most proud of is part of SheEO, which is our focus on diversity. It's really, really important to me. 4% of capital goes to women entrepreneurs, and 0.1% if you're a woman of color, which is insane. So 40% of the founders that we have funded so far with SheEO are women of color. I want that number to be higher. It's extremely important. And the racial diversity piece is a huge part of it. Yes, absolutely. And also diversity of age and of stage. We have activators in our network who are women who contribute $1,100. How many activators here, by the way? Yay, thank you to all of you. Activators range in age at the moment from 14 to 94. So we have mothers, daughters, and grandmothers in funding the kinds of companies that create a better world. And I'm with you on the doubling the numbers. Let's do that. And also regional diversity. I mean, we're coast to coast. So a real focus on you cannot build a new world with just the same people who built this one, right? Like if you want to get to a better place, you need to have everyone at the table. And so to really create a big tent, and part of the challenge with that, when you have a very, very diverse group, is there's just a lot of different perspectives. It's like way easier to go build a niche kind of thing, but then you get the same kind of world we've got. So how do you get all those voices together and create space for everyone to share their diverse perspectives? That's something that's really important to me.
Yeah, I believe there's a proverb, and it's if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And the going alone is when you have a bunch of yes people, and they're just agreeing because there's a lack of diversity. And when we get those people who are challenging us, who are putting our ideas through the ringer, the end product is always better, right? So now looking forward, we've marked the day, we've marked what we're proud of. What is a lesson that we can leave this room with that we need to focus on, something tangible moving forward? I feel weird because we went this way and then that way, and so we'll go with Farah this time. We'll mix it up.
So I'll talk about two things.
Okay.
Number one, and this is so important, ask for sponsors, not mentors. And mentors are important, and they coach you, they nudge you, but they stay in the background. Whereas sponsors are the ones who become your public cheerleaders, and they make it their life mission to get you promoted. And that's why the old boys clubs work, and we don't have those. And so I'm a very, very big believer of that. And secondly, and there's a lot of research behind it. I was looking at some of the research we at KPMG have done in this area. Take risks. My husband and I, sitting there, we moved across the Atlantic, not once but twice, for a complete unknown. but I am the exception. I'm not the norm. I was looking at some stats, according to some work we did in this field. There's actually less than 4 in 10 women are open to taking big risks that may be associated with career advancement. And this is where it gets interesting. Their inclination to take risk actually declines as they get more experienced and more confident. And if any of you have ever been mansplained to, you would know that that problem doesn't exist in men. It's actually a woman thing. And so if I could leave you with 2 lessons, those are the 2 things that have really worked for me. But I'm constantly telling myself to do that. So it doesn't come naturally, but we have to.
Yeah. And if I could just piggyback maybe a little bit on the sponsorship piece, if I doubt there's any men in this room that would avoid being alone with a woman, but that's something that's coming up right now. And my challenge to those individuals, and if you're in a room and you can challenge those individuals, is why would you feel that way? Do you not trust yourself? And if you don't trust yourself, you have to ask, what kind of society and culture are we living in that we don't trust men left alone with women, right? So that would be my piggyback to the sponsorship piece. What about yourself, Jessica?
One thing that we're doing in media is looking at expertise and the notion of who gets to be an expert. So I have 2 editors on our team that have electively decided from now on half the experts in a story have to be female. So it's really radical when you look at who are the doctors, lawyers, scientists that are being quoted on record as being experts. And in the case of science, it's extremely interesting because that in turn will affect like their funding, their tenure, all of these other kinds of things. So to me, that's a no-brainer. Obviously, we don't have a problem with that at this panel, but now, especially if I'm asked to speak, I try to make sure that there's a good gender race representation in the crowd. Who people see is who they believe. And so until we can change that, we will probably be sort of on the sidelines.
Absolutely. Vicki?
Yeah, so this one for me is, I think I'm going to just ask a question. How many people in this room would help someone if they asked them right now? Okay, cool. And how many people like asking for help? Right. So this is, this is a really deep insight. I think we've created environments where it's not that safe to ask for help, and in particular, women. We're in a lot of unsafe environments, and so saying that you don't know how to do something is not safe in a lot of places. And so this is something we focus on a lot with SheEO, is creating a space of radical generosity. So it's an environment, imagine if you're surrounded by radically generous people, how would that shift how you act? And this is an underlying value system and core that I think we really need to focus on. Minister Ng mentioned this earlier. If we were in more loving environments, we would all reach our potential. But being in these environments that are just not safe to get support and ask is a really big problem, and it holds so many of us back. So redesigning and being nicer to each other. I learned this literally from my mother. Generosity was underneath everything. And when I grew up in a family full of boys, and I thought, how am I going to create this initiative that's called generosity when everyone's like, wah, wah, I was generous today. Great. Way to go, Vic. It's not like I nailed it, I crushed it. We don't have power words for being nice. Yeah. None. And we need new language for that. So I just plunked radical in front of it. Radical generosity. It's a bit cooler. I'm radically generous. Oh, what's that? But again, it's like we have to create new language to create new behaviors. And this, for me, is something that we're really experimenting with.
So we should all be badass, kind people.
Yes.
Good-ass kind people.
All right. Minister Ng.
So I talked earlier about this awesome mandate to double the number of women entrepreneurs. But investments alone will not get us to successful entrepreneurs. Affordable childcare will help. Changing parental leave rules so that a woman in a family can decide with her partner to share some of that domestic work so that he and she can make the decision so that she can keep running her company. She can continue to be promoted. Having legislation, we just heard statistics earlier about, about the number of women on boards and in senior management. So a piece of legislation out there that is going to require boards that are federally regulated to disclose the makeup of gender as well as diversity on their boards. Representation and is going to matter, and that disclosure and that transparency is going to matter. So I would say that that hold us accountable because the policies and the social policies that we have put in place work hand in hand in partnership with the financial investments that we are making, that the private sector is making. But having just the one without the other will not get us the results that we're looking for, and we are looking for participation. Here is the ROI for everyone to consider. This government has the first women's entrepreneurship strategy. It's a $2 billion investment. I have a mandate to double the number of women entrepreneurs by 2025. If I do that, studies like that issued by McKinsey tells us that we can add up to $150 billion to the Canadian GDP. Those financial people here in the room, don't you think that's a good ROI for women's economic empowerment? I do.
Awesome. So I could keep going forever, but we only have a few more minutes, and you came to this lunch because you want to take something away from this as well too. So I believe we have 1 or 2 roving microphones, and if I can ask, when you do ask a question, please target it at a member of the panel just for timing's sake as well too. So if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand.
This cannot be a shy room.
Really? No questions? Oh, we got one over here. And then another one over here after.
Hi. Okay, so thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us. I find it quite interesting what you have talked about. And this question goes to Jessica, since you are related to communications. I heard something interesting about something called the Cassandra Curse, which is related to the issues that we're having when we're trying to express an idea, to share a particular idea to someone. And there are 3 problems that we usually have in order to convince someone that they should do something. Number 1 is that we talk in a language that they don't understand. Number 2, that they don't relate to us. And number 3, that the changes that we're actually asking them are too much for them to handle. So based on this particular 3 points, and based on your own experience when you're trying to deal with initiatives that support women, what are the challenges that you're actually having when you are trying to communicate this to others and change their behavior?
That is a really good question, and it reminds me more of my time working in corporate culture than in the media. Journalism is emotional labor. Like, if you've ever been interviewed here or written, you know that we're actually pretty good at putting all the cards on the table. I think in corporate culture it's different, and I'm curious to hear what some of my other colleagues think, but this is probably not the direct answer to your question, but I realized that I was taken much more seriously when I told everyone I was getting an MBA. Like, I just got treated differently. So I don't think it's what we're saying. I think it's a perception issue in our culture. Yeah.
I'm a tall, white male. They're all proxies for expertise, and I often share the stage with women who have PhDs, right? And it's an honor to do that, but we need to change that paradigm as well, too. Does anyone else have anything to offer to that question? No? Awesome. I believe we have another question here.
Great panel. Thank you very much. Michelle Albanese with TD Bank. I run our Responsible Sourcing and Supplier Diversity program at the bank, and I guess I have a question for Minister Mary Ng. Just in terms of, corporations are really taking the charge and leading the way when it comes to supplier diversity, which means using suppliers who are women-owned businesses, minority, LGBT, Indigenous, veterans, and people with disabled suppliers. So I just wanted to know what the government was doing around this type of procurement. You can call it social procurement as well, but either federally and also provincially, if there's been any progress with government using suppliers who are also minorities.
That's a great question. So yes, I have two answers to that. Number 1, government needs to be that customer. Government needs to create that supply chain, be a part of that supply chain where we are procuring from SMEs and particularly from Canadian SMEs, but Canadian SMEs that are women-owned, Indigenous-owned, owned by the different, diverse groups in Canada. So we are absolutely doing that. We have a program called, I apologize because it's government, so it's an acronym, but it's called BCIP. It's the Buyer in Canadian program. So we have that. The second thing I would say is that Canada has access to 1.5 billion customers worldwide through the free trade agreements that we have negotiated. So through the European Union, through CETA, with the Pacific Rim nations like Australia, Singapore, Japan, and 12 other nations through the CPTPP, and of course, give it out to my colleague, Chrystia Freeland, for bringing home NAFTA. But Canada has access to like 60% of the world's economy through 12 trade agreements. We have access to these great markets, but in these free trade agreements, in particular the CPTPP, CETA, the new NAFTA as well, there are chapters in there. There are chapters dedicated to SMEs to give our Canadian companies preferential access. So I'm very excited to work on, my title is Minister of Small Business and Export Promotion. Well, the export promotion side is about helping Canadian companies, female entrepreneurs, become more export ready so that we can grow domestically, but we can grow into those international markets, because there is not a company that I have met, an entrepreneur that I've met, that does not want access to customers, and there's 1.5 billion of them worldwide, and our Canadian companies, our female entrepreneurs, should get a piece of that business.
We have time for one more question.
My question is for Minister Ng. Amy Sullivan from Neighborhood Pharmacies. Great to see you. So right now in Canada, there are 40,000 pharmacists. Mm-hmm. It's Pharmacists Awareness Month. And you should see your pharmacist. Awesome. There are 10,500 pharmacies. And 60% of pharmacists are actually women. So we're helping you in your cause.
Thank you.
And certainly, I hope that you've visited your local pharmacist.
I have. As recent as the flu shot locally.
Yeah, that's great. So I think they can do more, obviously. Mm-hmm. Congratulations on your nomination this weekend.
Thank you.
And I think, what I would say is pharmacists are your partners in building that constructive economy, but also creating that capacity within the public healthcare system, beyond hospitals in terms of alleviating the wait times. And so that provision of services needs to be considered. And when we consider things like pharmacare and other policies, we do need to consider, how we make healthcare affordable for all, but also accessible in terms of the services when and where they need it. And as a single mom who runs into the pharmacy to get those flu shots, and I've done it for the last 7 years, long before I was at Neighborhood, it's a great service and a great access point. So I'd encourage you to visit your pharmacy and think about, the policies I think you put out there. Childcare as well. And so I'm gonna put my personal hat on and say, I hope that we make some progress towards that, because it certainly will encourage more women in the workforce and just remove a barrier that is so important and critical for women in terms of working.
Yes, I agree with you. And Pharmacy Awareness Month, let's plug that, and let's, that was great. Part of my title is promotion. Small businesses, come on.
Minister of Humble Brag. I think I have to hand it over here. We're running hopefully on time.
So this was a fantastic panel, and I'd like to bring up our sponsor to thank the panel today. Welcome Chandran and Fernando of Matrix 360, and thank you again for sponsoring this event.
Good afternoon. My name is Chandran Fernando of Matrix 360. I am the managing partner for Matrix 360. We are an advisory platform that specializes in the talent management and workplace strategy for the private sector, specifically for the commercial real estate and development industry. We are very intentional with our lens of our approach. Our focus is diversity, equity, and belonging in the industry. We connect the awareness to the how, because that's very important. I would really like to thank the Empire Club again and the Board of Directors for hosting another important conversation this afternoon. And on top of it, the panelists, for you all to share your knowledge, your wisdom, and your perspectives. And it's not just about the showcasing, but it's the how-to, and that's very important. So thank you again. So as an advocate and partner for equity and belonging, I strongly believe we must not only celebrate and have conversations one time out of the year, but conversations that lead to actions, to the how, where equity is truly established in our workplaces, our homes, and our society. As a gay man, as a person who was born outside of Canada, so I am an immigrant, a person of color, and some may say I'm young, which I'll take, right? And most importantly, a business leader. I must take this opportunity to use my voice of influence to disrupt and educate and build a stronger society where the intersectionality of women and men are embraced, showcased, and advanced. Today, the world is becoming more polarized, as we could see. It's all divided based on factors that breed fear, bigotry, lack of accountability, ignorance, and hate. As Canadians, we have the opportunity to lead the way towards reconciliation and equity for all. So after all, today's theme at the International Women's Day for 2019 is one thing: balance for better. So as we celebrate today and the rest of the week, and hopefully 365 days of the year and then some, let's truly live in our everyday action for balance for better. And I do thank you for your attendance.
I do want to take this moment also to recognize a young woman who's done a lot of work with me over the last months. And I want to recognize Marie, who's got a promotion, and she's leaving the Empire Club as our events manager. And she's, since September, run 22 events. I also want, thank you, Marie, and congratulations on your new role. I want to recognize our executive director, Jehan, who's come back from maternity leave. Today is her first day back. And I want to congratulate Bill, who has run things well in her absence. And thank you. This is our Empire Club team, and thank you very much. We are at the forefront, and today is a great example of that. We're looking for events all the time. We are dedicated to being at the forefront. Last week we had David Lametti, our Attorney General. We have the Finance Minister coming federally on the 20th in partnership with the Toronto Board of Trade and the Canadian Club. We have the Mayor of Toronto coming on March 20th. We have the new Ontario's Finance Minister coming on March 28th, and a whole bunch more this season. So thank you for coming today, and I really appreciate your support of our events. Thanks again to Matrix and Spencer Stewart for being sponsors. Thanks to the Minister and all our panelists and Jake for running this. This has been a great event. Meeting adjourned.